Hello students, today we are going to start the lesson on violence written by J. Krishnamurti. There is a great deal of violence in the world. There is physical violence and also inward violence. Writer says that in the world we deal with lots of violence. Violence in Hindi is called hinsa. So, according to the writer, there is much violence in this world. Everywhere we can notice violence. According to the writer, there are two kinds of violence we can notice. First one is physical violence and second one is inward violence. Physical violence which deals with the physical body, and the inward violence which happens inside our mind or which takes place inside the man's mind, human being's mind. So that is called inward violence. Physical violence is to kill another, to hurt other people consciously, deliberately or without thought, to say cruel things full of antagonism and hate. According to the author, physical violence means to kill somebody or to hurt the feelings of somebody consciously. Consciously means you are in your senses and you are deliberately, you are intentionally hurting the feeling of somebody. So that is also included in the physical violence. Then deliberately means intentionally. In Hindi, deliberately means जानबूझ के. So if you hurt somebody's feelings deliberately, it is also included in physical violence. To say cruel things full of antagonism and hate, the writer also says that if we say cruel things means the things full of cruelty, and if we say things which are full of antagonism, and antagonism means aggressive opposition, that means you oppose something very aggressively, that is called antagonism. So antagonism and hate are also included in the physical violence. So these are some of the things that the author has included in physical violence. That means to kill somebody or to hurt the feelings of somebody consciously or deliberately or without thought, or to say cruel things which are full of antagonism, and to hate somebody. These are all included in physical violence. According to the author, these are all examples of physical violence. And inwardly, inside the skin, to dislike people, to hate people, to criticize people. And the inward violence which happens inside the skin, inside our skin means that happens inside our brain, that take place inside our mind. What we think, that means to dislike people. If you do not like people, that is included in the inward violence. To hate people, the writer says that if we hate people, that is also included in the outward violence as well as the inward violence. To criticize people, criticize means in Hindi, criticize means ninda karna. So if we criticize somebody, that is also included in inward violence. Inwardly, we are always quarreling, battling not only with others but with ourselves. And the writer says that inwardly we always quarrel, we always fight or battle not only with ourselves, not only with others but also with ourselves. Why do we quarrel? Why do we battle with others and ourselves? Because the writer says that we want people to change. We want people to act according to our wishes. And that's why we always quarrel, we always fight with not only other people but also with ourselves. We want to force them to our way of thinking. We want others to do whatever we want them to do. That means we force our will on others. We want somebody to act according to our will, and that's why we quarrel with them. And according to the author, this is also a kind of a violence. In the world as we grow up, we see a great deal of violence at all levels of human existence. Writer says that in this world, as we grow, as we become older, we see great deal of violence, lots of violence all around us. Wherever there human being exists, we can see lot of violence in the society all over the world. The ultimate violence is war. Ultimate means final or the last stage. So according to the author, the final or the last stage of the violence is war. And the writer says that the people and the countries engage in war for various reasons. Some of these reasons are the killing for ideas. That means people kill each other just for ideas, because the people have different ideas and they don't agree with each other's ideas. That's why they kill each other. Then for so-called religious principles, people also kill each other for the sake of religious principles. For the sake of religions, people are eager to kill each other. For nationalities, even people kill for their nationalities. The killing to preserve a little piece of land. And finally, the writer also says people can kill each other for a piece of land. To do that, man will kill. And to achieve this violence, to achieve this ultimate violence, the people are ready to do anything. Man will kill each other, they will destroy each other, they are also ready to maim. Maim means cause injury. People are ready to cause or inflict injury to each other, and they are also ready and also be killed himself. And for the sake of violence, for the sake of this war, they are ready to sacrifice themselves also. They are ready to be killed themselves. That means they can go to any extent to achieve this goal of violence. There is enormous violence in the world. The rich wanting to keep people poor, and the poor wanting to get rich, and in the process hating the rich. Writer says that there is enormous violence in the world. Enormous means large or very big. According to the author, there is large scale violence in the world. Those who are already rich, they want poor people to remain poor all their life, so that the rich people could possess all the resources of this world. Similarly, poor wanting to get rich and in the process hating the rich. Similarly, poor people also want to become rich, and that's why they hate rich people. They hate the people who are already rich. And you being caught in society are also going to contribute to this. The writer says that you, the student, the younger generation, because you are also the part of the society, so you are also going to contribute in this violence in the future. There is violence between husband, wife, and children. Writer explains that violence is not only prevalent in the society, but we can notice violence in the family itself. We can notice violence between husband, wife, and children. There is violence, antagonism, hate, cruelty, ugly criticism, anger. And the writer says that in the society as well in the family, we can notice the qualities like violence, antagonism. Antagonism means aggressive opposition, to oppose somebody or something very aggressively. Hate, cruelty. Cruelty means to engage in cruel things, to believe in cruelty. Ugly criticism. Ugly criticism. Ugly criticism means to criticize somebody without any reason, to criticize somebody or something for just the sake of criticism without any reason. And anger. All this is inherent. Writer says that all these bad qualities are inherent in man. Inherent means natural or inborn. So the writer says that all these bad qualities are present in human being inherently. Inherently means inborn. All these qualities are natural qualities. All these qualities are inborn qualities which are found in every human being. It is inherent in you, and the writer says that it is also inherent you in the students, in the younger generation, and in the future generation. And education is supposed to help you to go beyond all that. The author says that the purpose of the education is supposed to help you to get you out of these qualities, to get you out of these bad qualities, to help you realize about these bad qualities. Writer says that the purpose of education is not merely to pass an examination and get a job. People get education not for the sole purpose of passing an examination or to get a job. There is much more to the education. The role of education is much more beyond this. You have to be educated so that you become a really beautiful, healthy, sane, rational human being. We get education, we want to get education so that we can become a beautiful human being. Here the beautiful means beautiful from inside, beautiful from your thoughts. Your thoughts become beautiful. Your thinking becomes beautiful. Also, the purpose of the education is to become healthy, sane. Sane means a person who knows what is right and what is wrong. A person who knows what he should do and what he shouldn't do. Rational human being. Rational means wise person. Rational means wise. So education helps you to become a beautiful human being. That means your thoughts and your thinking becomes nice and beautiful. You become a healthy human being. You become a sane human being. It also helps you to become a rational human being, a wise human being, and not a brutal man with a very clever brain who can argue and defend his brutality. Author says that the purpose of the education is not to become a brutal man who is very clever in his brain and who can argue and defend his thinking, his thoughts without any reason. The writer says that the purpose of education is not the material success, but the purpose of education is that it helps you to become a healthy, beautiful, sane, and a wise human being. You are going to face all this violence as you grow up. The writer says that as we become older, as we grow older, we will face these violence which is prevalent in the society, as well as we can face the inward violence. You will forget all that you have heard here and will be caught in the stream of society. The writer addresses the students and the younger generation and says them and tells them that they will forget all that they have heard here. The writer says that they will forget all that he is talking about, that the writer is talking about in this lesson, and the students will become the part of the same society that spread hatred and antagonism in the world or society. You will become like the rest of the cruel, hard, bitter, angry, violent world, and you will not help to bring about a new society, a new world. The writer is somewhat pessimistic in his thoughts here in these lines, and he says that it is very much likely that those students, those younger generation to whom he is addressing here, it is very much likely that they will also become the part of this violent society, the cruel society, and it is very much likely that they may not help to bring about a new society, to bring about a new world. But a new world is necessary. But the author says that today the new world is very, very necessary. We have to change this world. We have to bring change in this world. A new culture is necessary, and to make a new world, we have to change the culture also. We have to bring about a new culture also. The old culture is dead, buried, burnt, exploded, and vaporized. According to the author, the old culture is outdated. It is of no use today. We can say that old culture is now just like a dead body, just like a body which is already buried, or something which is already born, or something which is exploded or vaporized. So the writer says that old culture is outdated and of no use in today's world, in this new age, and we have to bring a new world. We have to bring a new culture. We have to bring a revolution in this world and to change the culture of this world. You have to create a new culture, and writer says that for that we have the students, the younger generation, have to create a new culture for the world and for themselves. Writer says that a new culture cannot be based on violence. He says that the old culture was based on violence, but we have to change this culture. The new culture depends on you, because the older generation has built a society based on violence. The writer says that the new culture depends on the younger generation. It is the duty of the younger generation, it is the duty of the today's students to bring a new world, to bring the new culture in this world. It solely depends on today's students, it solely depends on the younger generation, on the shoulders of the younger generation. Why the writer is saying so? Because he thinks that the older generation has built a society based on violence, based on aggressiveness, and it is this that has caused all the confusion and all the misery. And because the old culture, old society was based on violence and aggressiveness, and that's why there is confusion and misery all around us. People are confused, people are miserable. Misery means unhappiness. So people are unhappy, people are miserable, they are confused, because the old society was based on violence and aggressiveness. The older generation have produced this world, and you have to change it. Writer says that the society based on violence was produced by the older generation, and the students, and today's students, the younger generation, have to change it. You cannot just sit back and say, I will follow the rest of the people and seek success and position. The writer says that today's generation, today's students can't sit back meekly and say that I will follow the rest of the people and seek success and position. That means they can't be part of the system. They have to change the system. The system which was built on violence and on aggressiveness, the system should be changed. We have to bring change in the society and culture, and it is the duty of the younger generation of today's students to get this change, to bring this change in the society and its culture. If you do, your children are going to suffer. The writer says that if today's younger generation and today's students will not do anything to change this society, to change this world, then the future generation, your children, that means the future generation, will suffer. The generation which will come in this world after maybe 20 years or 30 years, they will suffer. You may have a good time, but your children are going to pay for it. The writer says that it may be possible that today's generation or the students may have some good time, but their children, their future generation, may have to pay for all these, may have to suffer for all these. So you have to take all that into account, the outward cruelty of man to man in the name of God. So the writer says that we have to notice all that is happening around us, the cruelty that man, the human being, inflict to other human being, other man, in the name of God, in the name of religion, in the name of self-importance. People engage in cruelty, in violence, in the name of God. That means they hate each other. They even engage in war of wars, and sometimes in physical battle with other people, just in the name of God, just in the name of self-importance, just because people consider themselves as more important. That's why they engage in violence and cruelty. You will have to consider the outward cruelty and violence and the inward violence which you do not know yet, and the inward violence which you do not yet know. The writer addresses the younger generation and students and says that you should notice and consider the outward cruelty, the cruelty that you notice all around you in the society, in this world. You may not have noticed the inward violence because you are a teenager or very young, but you may notice that inward violence also in the future. You are still young, but as you grow older, you will realize how inwardly man goes through hell. Writer says that as you are still very young, but as you grow older in your age, you will realize how inwardly man goes through hell. The life of a man is full of difficulties, full of problems. In day-to-day life, a human being goes through many difficulties, many problems. The younger generation, the teenagers who are very young, they may not have faced those difficulties and problems. But writer says that as they may get older, they may also face all these problems and all these difficulties, and then they will go through those inward violence. Inwardly man goes through hell, goes through great misery, because he is in constant battle with himself, with his wife, with his children, with his neighbors, with his gods. The writer says that man goes through this inward misery because he is in constant battle. He is continuously battling with, he is continuously fighting with himself, with his wife, with his children, and even with neighbors, and sometimes even with the gods. A person may not agree with his wife, a person may not agree with his children, a person may not agree with his neighbors, and even a person may not be satisfied with the gods, and that's why he may even battle with, even he may fight with the gods, that why his wishes were not fulfilled. He is in sorrow and confusion, and there is no love, no kindliness, no generosity, and no charity. The writer says that such a person who is continuously at war, continuously fighting with his wife, with his children, with his neighbors, or even with his God, such a person leads a very sorrowful life, a life full of confusion, and in the life of such a person there is no love, no kindliness, and no generosity. And a person may have a PhD after his name, or he may become a businessman with house and cars, But if he has no love, no affection, kindness, no consideration, he is really worse than an animal, because he contributes to a world that is destructive. The writer says that a person may have achieved a great degree in education. He may have a PhD after his name. He may become a great businessman. He may have lots of cars and lots of big houses. But if in that person's life there is no love, there is no affection, there is no kindness, there is no kindliness or consideration for others, then that kind of person is really worse, is really bad than an animal. The writer says that even animal is better than such a person, because such a person contributes to a world that is destructive. Such a person only contributes in a violent world, because such a person, such a man only makes world more destructive, only makes world more violent. So he can't be able to bring change in the society and world, and he may also contribute in the violence and destructiveness in the world. So that kind of person is even worse than an animal. So while you are young, you have to know all these things. And writer says that the students and the younger people who are still young, they must know what kind of society we are living in, what is inward violence and what is outward violence. You have to be shown all these things. They must know about all these things. They must know about all these qualities of the society. You have to be exposed to all these things so that your mind begins to think. When the students came to know about these things, about these inward violence and outward violence, and how the society works, how the society operates, then the students, the younger generation, will begin to think about all these things. Otherwise, you will become like the rest of the world. Because if the students will not think about these things, then they will also be a part of this destructive world, and they will not bring a change, they will not bring a new culture to this world. And without love, without affection, without charity and generosity, life becomes a terrible business. And if there is no love, no affection, no charity and no generosity in your life, then the life will become a terrible business, a very bad business. It will be very terrible to live a life. It will be very terrible. It will be very bad to lead a happy and prosperous life. That is why one has to look into all these problems of violence. And that's why writer says that it is very important to look into all these problems of violence, whether it is inward violence or whether it is outward violence. Not to understand violence is to be really ignorant, because if you not try to understand, if you not try to comprehend violence, you are trying to be an ignorant person, a person who doesn't know anything about this world, a person who doesn't know how this society works, a person who doesn't know how this society operates. Such kind of person is without any intelligence and without culture. Such kind of person is worse than animal, and he is without any intelligence and without any culture. Life is something enormous, and merely to carve out a little hole for oneself and remain in that little hole, fighting off everybody, is not to live in. Writer says that life is much bigger. The meaning of the life is much bigger. It is just not a success in the material things. It is not just that you get some position or a rank in the society and you think that you have become a successful person. The writer says that life is much more, much greater than all these materialistic things. According to writer, these kinds of materialistic things are very petty. Anybody can achieve these things, but life is much more. Life is much bigger. you have to think out of box. You have to think how the society operates, and you have to bring the change in today's society and this today's world. It is up to you. From now on, you have to know about all these things. And the writer says that it is the responsibility of each and every person to know about all these things about the society and this world. It is the responsibility of an individual, each and every person, to know about these things. You have to choose deliberately to go the way of violence or to stand up against society. And the writer says that it is the duty of a person, it is the duty of an individual. You have to choose deliberately with purpose whether he wants to choose a path of violence, or he wants to stand against it and wants to create a new society, wants to create a new world. This solely depends on an individual. This solely depends on a person himself. Be free, live happily, joyously, without any antagonism, without any hate. And the writer suggests and advises us that we should live a free and happy life. We should live a joyous life without any antagonism and without any hate for anybody. There shouldn't be any hate, there shouldn't be any feeling of violence or hatred in our mind or heart. Then life becomes something quite different. If you do this, the writer says that your life will change. You will become quite different human being. Then life has a meaning, is full of joy and clarity. If you do this, your life will get a meaning. Your life will have clarity. You have no confusion in your life, and you will lead a happy, joyful, and meaningful life. When you woke up this morning, did you look out of the window? You would have seen those hills become saffron as the sun rose against that lovely blue sky. The writer tells us that when you woke up this morning, did you look out of the window? And when you looked out of that window, you would have seen those hills become saffron as the sun rose against that lovely blue sky. Have you noticed that when the sun was rising, the color on the hills became saffron? Did you notice that? And as the birds began to sing and the early morning cuckoo cooed, did you notice the singing of the cuckoo? There was a deep silence all around, a sense of great beauty and loneliness. And at that time, when you woke up, there was deep silence all around. Only sound that you could hear at that time was the sound of nature, the sound of the birds. Did you notice all these at that time? Did you notice the great beauty and loneliness at that time? And if one is not aware of all that, one might just as well be dead. And writer says that if you are not aware of all the beauty of this nature, if you are not aware what is happening all around you, if you are not aware about the beauty of the nature, then you are as good as a dead person, because a dead person can't feel all these things. A dead person can't feel the nature. For a dead person, nature is worthless. So if you are not aware of all these things, the writer says that you are as good as a dead person. Writer also says that very few people are aware of all these things, what is happening around them, what is happening in the society, what is happening in the nature. They are not aware about the nature itself. You can be aware of it only when your mind and heart are open. And the writer says that you can aware of all these things if your mind is open-minded, if you think openly, if you think about all these things without any prejudice, without any hatred. If there is no hatred, no violence inwardly or outwardly in your life, then you can feel all these things in your mind as well in your heart also. When you are not frightened, when you are no longer violent, you can also feel all these things when you are not frightened about your daily life, or what will you do in the next moment. You are not frightened of yourself, you are not frightened of anybody else in this world. And when you are no longer violent, your life is peaceful and full of happiness. In that condition, you will be aware of all that things, all those things which are happening around you. Then there is joy. There is an extraordinary bliss of which very few people know. Bliss means extreme joy or extreme happiness. If you know this, then there will be joy in your life. There will be extraordinary happiness. There will be supreme joy or supreme happiness in your life, which very few people know, because very few people in this world could achieve all this. And it is the part of education to bring that state in the human mind. And the writer says that it is the duty of education, it is the purpose of education to bring about that change in your life, to bring about that change in your thinking. It is the duty of the education. Our education should be such that it will bring a change in the society, in the world, as well as it will help in making a new culture, in making a new world. Thank you.